Okay, inshallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, welcome everyone to tonight's special live talk titled The Echo of Fitrah, Revert's Reflection on Islam and Japanese Modernity, organized by the Japan Dawah Center in Osaka in collaboration with Dawah Islam, the Bumi Matahari Terbit, DIDBMT. First of all, we are honored to have all of you with us, whether you are joining from Japan or Malaysia or anywhere else around the world. And may this session be filled with barakah and bring us closer to understanding the beauty of Islam across cultures and backgrounds, inshallah. So before we start our live talk today, let me introduce our special guest for tonight, Mr. Hani Abdelhadi, or we can call you Hani Sensei. Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum salam. Rahmatullah barakatuh.
How are you, Hani Sensei? Is everything fine?
Yeah, everything fine. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. For our viewers' information, Hani Sensei is a Muslim revert who has a profound journey into Islam with his unique perspective, of course, and navigating between his personal spiritual growth and his observations of modern Japanese society. He brings fresh insights into the concept of fitrah, our natural disposition, and how Islam speaks to the heart across cultures and generations. And therefore, tonight we'll be reflecting on what it means to come back to fitrah, the pure states of being, and how Islam resonates even in a highly modern and disciplined society like Japan. How does one find truth in a world so deeply rooted in materialism and individualism? And what can we learn from Hani Sensei, inshallah? Without further delay, I would like to invite Hani Sensei to share his thoughts on tonight's live talk. فليتفضل مشكورا. دوزو Hani Sensei.
Thank you very much. Then, can you see my screen? Not yet.
Not yet, Hani Sensei.
Not yet.
All right, can see now.
Okay, then I will start my talk. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Firstly, it is a great honor and blessing to be with you today, and I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity and extend my warmest greetings to everyone joining us, whether from Malaysia or beyond. And although we are gathering virtually, I pray that our hearts may still be connected in a shared pursuit of understanding, reflection, and faith. So, my name is Hani Abdelhadi. I'm a faculty member at the School of Commerce, Meiji University, Tokyo, and director of the Tokyo Camii Institute. My academic focus lies in the Palestinian issue, Middle Eastern international relations, and also Islamic thought. So today, however, I speak not only in my capacity as an academic, but as someone who embraced Islam not through familial tradition or communal identity, but through philosophical inquiry. So the path that led me to Islam was, in one sense, deeply very personal, and I believe it holds resonance for many who grew up in societies where religion is neither discussed nor considered necessary. So, especially in Japan, where overt expressions of faith are uncommon, my experience may offer insight into how faith can emerge in the midst of secular silence. So, I was born in Japan to a Palestinian Muslim father and a Japanese mother, but my upbringing was entirely embedded with Japanese society. So there was virtually no formal education in Islam at home. I didn't learn Arabic, nor was I taught about Palestine in any meaningful way. And my first language is, of course, Japanese, and in both cultural and social terms, I was raised simply as an ordinary Japanese child. In other words, while I was the child of a Muslim, I was not raised as a Muslim. My religious identity was ambiguous, and I didn't even feel comfortable calling myself a Muslim. And questions like what is faith or who is God and astaghfirullah did not exist in my mind as a child. They were simply not part of my world, simply. And the worldview I had internalized was that of secular rationalism, widely shared across Japanese society. And I believed in science, trusted in logic, and implicitly absorbed the idea that religious faith was outdated, irrational, or at best irrelevant. Mm. So, schools, media, and even family interactions all reinforced this attitude from my view. And talking about religion was kind of awkward, even embarrassing, and it was seen as a deviation from the norm. So this didn't mean I explicitly rejected religion. Rather, I had been socialized into a world where religion was treated as something unnecessary, something to be politely avoided. And looking back, I now realize that this supposed neutrality was far from neutral, and it was embedded in a distinct value system, one that privileged science over revelation, reason over faith, autonomy over submission. And I had grown up believing, without ever being told directly, that religious people were somehow less intelligent or less free. And religion was kind of primitive and irrational or simply something other people believe. And these assumptions were never stated openly, but they formed the unspoken atmosphere in which I was raised, and I had absorbed them without question. So, why then did someone like me eventually come to embrace Islam? The answer, I believe, lies in philosophy. In university, I began to ask questions I had never previously considered. What is this world? Why does anything exist at all? And what is the meaning of life if there's one? So it was through engaging with these questions, not through culture or emotion, that I found myself led almost inevitably to the possibility of faith, not faith as inheritance, but faith as the necessary consequence of deep kind of reflection. So shortly after entering university, I enrolled in courses on Arabic and Islamic studies. At first, it was just out of casual curiosity, something I felt I ought to explore given my national heritage, kind of. But as I encountered the Quran and the intellectual tradition of Islamic philosophy, I found myself increasingly drawn in, and not emotionally, but intellectually. And one question in particular shook me to my core. Why is there something rather than nothing? At first glance, it may seem abstract or irrelevant, but for me, this question became the gateway to everything. And science could describe how the universe works, but it could not explain why it exists at all. Rationalism and empiricism offer no kind of satisfactory answer. They either dismissed the question of it or ignored it altogether. And even existentialist claims that meaning must be self constructed and felt insufficient. Deep down, I long to believe that the world has an inherent meaning, not just a meaning we invent. Perhaps this longing itself was rooted in my rationalist background, a desire for coherence, a hunger for a unified framework of truth. So that desire led me to the thought of Ibn Sina, firstly, and Al Ghazali and Ibn Arabi, for example. And through their works, I came to understand the Islamic notion that the existence of the world presupposes the existence of God. In other words, the world exists because God exists and will it to be. So this is the foundation of Tawheed, the oneness of God, not merely as a belief, but as a metaphysical explanation of being itself. And one verse from the Quran left a profound impact on me. He is the first and the last, the manifest and the hidden. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. So this verse reshaped my thinking. It implies that God is not just one being among many, but rather being itself, the necessary, existent, al-wajib al-wujud. Everything else exists only because he exists. Without him, there is nothing. So, through this theological philosophical lens, I began to see Islam not as a set of rigid rules or cultural customs, but as a deeply coherent intellectual system, one that unites metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology. So, in my third year at university, I formally embraced Islam, alhamdulillah, and this decision was not driven by kind of emotional or spiritual experience or social belonging, but by conviction, by the realization that Islam offered the most consistent and comprehensive explanation for existence, meaning, and human life. So, this my talk, is the result of that journey, both personal and philosophical. So it's not just a testimony, but a proposal, kind of. Even in a society that has largely lost religion, one can still be drawn through the sheer power of questioning toward faith. So in the talk that follow, I will further explore how Islam answers the question of existence and what relevance this answer might have in a society like Japan today. So now on, I explore the foundational question that led me to Islam. Maybe this kind of argument is even familiar for most of you, but this is very important. Why is there something rather than nothing? This inquiry is not merely a personal or philosophical curiosity. So it is a central concern in Islamic theology and philosophy, and one that has preoccupied thinkers throughout human history. So, like most people raised in Japan, I was brought up within a scientific and a rationalist worldview. I believe that reason and empirical knowledge were the most trustworthy means of understanding reality. But when I entered the university and began studying philosophy, I encountered a question that I had never previously considered. That was, why does anything exist at all? So why is there something rather than nothing? This question, yeah, differs from scientific inquiries like how did the universe begin or what are the laws of physics. This cannot be emphasized enough that science is capable of answering how the world works, but it cannot answer why it exists. So it simply takes existence for granted. This is a limitation built into the very methodology of empirical inquiry. So, this was the moment I became aware of the epistemic limits of modern rationalism, and science and logical reasoning can explain the mechanisms of things, but they cannot provide a foundation for why anything is there in the first place. So it was as if all the systems I had trusted to provide knowledge turned away from the most basic and urgent question. So, when confronted with the question of existence, many modern philosophies offer one of three responses. One is there is no answer, and two is we must invent our own meaning, and third is the question itself is meaningless. So these approaches reflect the influence of nihilism and existentialism and structuralism and postmodernism. I found these ideas intellectually stimulating but ultimately unsatisfying. So deep inside, I still felt that the world must have inherent meaning, not just meaning we create for ourselves. And ironically, this desire for coherence may have been the result of the very rationalism I was beginning to outgrow. So, rationalism had trained me to seek systematic, unified explanations, and now it couldn't deliver them. Still, it left me with the longing. So, in this sense, it was reason itself that brought me to the limits of reason and to the threshold of metaphysics. So, this dilemma is not new. For example, Martin Heidegger, in Being and Time, described the question, why is there something rather than nothing, as the most fundamental and most forgotten of all questions. But even Heidegger didn't offer a clear answer. His philosophy points us toward an openness to being, but not to the source of being. So at this point, I realized that modern philosophy, despite its richness, had little to say about the reason for existence itself. The question remained unanswered. So I began to seek a worldview that did not ignore this question but engaged with it directly and systematically. And that search led me somewhat expectedly to Islamic philosophy and theology. And in Islam, I found a metaphysical system that addressed the question of being with depth, clarity, and coherence. So, in the second half of my this topic, I will explain how Islamic philosophy, particularly the works of thinkers like Ibn Sina, Al Ghazali, and Ibn Arabi, helped me understand existence itself as grounded in the being and will of God, and how the Quran offers a concise but profound response to the question that launched my search. As discussed earlier, the question, why is there something rather than nothing, receives no substantial answer from modern rationalist or empirical thought. Many contemporary philosophies that deflect or dissolve the question, offering subjective meaning making in place of objective metaphysical grounding. But for me, such responses were insufficient. It was in this intellectual gap that I encountered Islamic theology and philosophy. So, Islamic theology, ilm al-kalam, Allah is understood as al-wajib al-wujud, the necessary existent, and this concept is systematized by Ibn Sina in Kitab al-Shifa and refers to being those whose existence is logically necessary and who cannot not exist. In contrast, everything in the universe is a contingent being, mumkin al-wujud, requiring an external cause for its existence. The Quran articulates these principles succinctly. So his command is only when he intends the thing that he says to it, be and it is. Kun fayakun, this part. So this verse expresses the idea that existence is not the result of chance or impersonal necessity, but a direct consequence of divine will and command. So God is not a passive ground of being. He is a conscious, intentional creator who calls things into existence. So Ibn Sina also developed hierarchical models of existence, Tartib al-Wujud, in which all beings emanate from the necessary existence in descending levels of dependence. And this model was later defined by thinkers such as Suhrawardi and Mil Damar through the concept of tashkik al-wujud, the gradation or modulation of being. And it offers not just an ontological framework, but a deeply spiritual and intellectual map of reality. So, although structurally similar to the first cause argument of Thomas Aquinas, Islamic metaphysics offers a more integrated vision that brings causality, contingency, and necessity and purpose into a single explanatory framework rooted in revelation. So, at the intersection of theology and metaphysics, Sufism brings a profound perspective on being. Ibn Arabi, in Al Futuhat al Makkiyah and Husus al Hikam, introduced the doctrine of Wahdat al Wujud, the oneness of being. According to this view, only Allah truly exists. Everything else is a manifestation, tajalli, of divine attributes. What a beautiful explanation. It shook me deeply, seriously. So, this is often misunderstood as pantheism, like Spinoza, but in fact, it affirms divine transcendence by emphasizing that created things do not possess independent existence. They exist only through the reflection of divine reality rather than blurring the line between creator and creation. So Ibn Arabi's perspective deepens Tawheed by revealing the illusion of separateness. Every being in its very existence points back to the real, al-haq. So Islam's response to the question of existence can be summarized as follows: the 5 points. Allah is necessarily existent, and the world exists by divine will, and all things are contingent, and existence has purpose, and being is divine disclosure. So in Japan, where faith is often equated with irrationality or cultural nostalgia, kind of, this framework presents an important alternative. Islam offers faith not as emotional escape or dogma, but as a rationally grounded, intellectually rigorous, and metaphysically consistent worldview. So, through Islam, I found a framework that makes sense of existence itself. It is not merely a belief system, but an intellectual and spiritual home, a place where reason and revelation are reconciled, and where the mystery of being is not erased but illuminated. Hmm. By the way, in contemporary Japanese society, it is common for people to say, I'm not religious. On surveys, in casual conversation, or in media interviews, this statement is often made without hesitation or discomfort. On the surface, it seems to reflect the absence of personal belief or religious affiliation. However, if we examine the deeper layers of this self description, we find that it points not merely to a lack of religious interest, but to a loss of the very language through which religion can be expressed and understood. So, in public education and mass media, religion is almost entirely absent. So, religious values are excluded from moral education, and ethical discourse is framed in terms of public harmony or cooperation. So, religion, when it appears in news coverage, is often associated with crime, cults, or exotic traditions, reinforcing the impression that religion is unstable, irrational, or potentially dangerous. So, as a result, even when individuals hold spiritual sentiments or existential concerns, it becomes difficult for them to express these in a public or intelligible form. So, for example, if someone were to say, I believe in life after death, or I think about the existence of God, even in a respectful tone, such remarks might be received as socially awkward or overly personal. So, this illustrates a key feature of Japanese secularism. It doesn't erase religion, but it renders it indiscernible and unutterable in the public sphere. So scholars such as Isomae have noted that Japan's religiosity is not absent, but instead absorbed into non-religious categories such as culture, custom, ritual, or atmosphere. And religion is present, but it is not recognized as religion. So it has been reframed, domesticated, and rendered invisible by the dominant cultural logic. So this structure is deeply rooted in Japan's modern political history. So during the Meiji period, state Shinto, we call it state Shinto, was, or maybe national Shinto, because the Shintoism is the traditional, authentic one, but the state Shinto was institutionalized as a ritual tool for national unification. And after Japan's defeat in World War II, the American led occupation enforced a strict separation of religion and state. So religion was relocated to the private realm and redefined as a matter of personal feeling, stripped of its political, ethical, and ontological dimensions. So this history has produced a society in which religion is not so much denied as silenced. Religion becomes a matter of individual sentiment at best, and even then, preferably unspoken. In such a society, the idea of discussing religion openly, intellectually, or socially is constrained not by law but by an ambient social atmosphere of hesitation and avoidance. So this cultural atmosphere also manifests in the disconnection between ritual and meaning. So in Japan, people routinely participate in New Year shrine visits. It's called Hatsumode, and Buddhist funerals and Obon gatherings. It's a summer festival honoring deceased ancestors and other seasonal customs. So while these practices have religious origins, they are often observed as social traditions rather than acts of faith. So yet few can articulate the theological or metaphysical significance of these acts. So the rituals are performed not because of faith, but because they are socially expected. The doing of religion has become detached from any inner conviction or inquiry into its purpose. So here in the insights of Yamamoto Shichihei are particularly illuminating. So in his influential work, Kuki no Kenkyu, The Anatomy of Air, Yamamoto argued that Japanese social behavior is governed less by reason or principle than by an invisible force he called air, the ambient pressure of social expectation. By the way, Ishihei was a very strict Christian, and in this context, even religious practice is shaped by the desire not to disturb the atmosphere. So people pray, attend ceremonies, and follow customs not because they believe, but because that's what everyone does. So, from the Islamic perspective, this is not merely social conformism. It can be understood as a form of idolatry, shirk. So, not in the sense of worshiping physical idols, but in the deeper Quranic sense of talking something other than Allah as the ultimate criterion for judgment and action. So, the Quran states how you seen the one who takes his own desire as his God. أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. So in this context, desire refers not only to individual impulse, but to any social logic that displaces divine guidance as the highest authority. When the air of the group becomes more decisive than revelation, when social expectation takes precedence over truth, a kind of functional shirk may emerge. And parallel to this, we see a significant shift among Japanese youth toward new forms of spiritual engagement, particularly in what is known as oshikatsu in Japanese, a culture of devoted fandom. Young people build intense, emotionally charged relationships with idols, anime characters, virtual YouTubers, and influencers, and they follow them religiously, attend events, collect merchandise, memorize their words, and share their images as sacred tokens. Like, and these practices, while not religious in the doctrinal sense, but mirror many of the literal, emotional, and communal dynamics of traditional religion. Fans form tight knit communities, share scriptures like quotes, memes, and observe taboo behaviors such as betraying one's oshi is idol. These patterns suggest that the human hunger for meaning, devotion, and belonging has not disappeared. It has simply taken new forms. So, this raises an important question. If the structure of religion remains, even when its content is denied, what has truly changed? So, alongside fandom culture, the structure of social media itself reinforces the new model of spiritual behavior. So, one rooted in the pursuit of visibility, validation, and public affirmation. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, reward constant exhibition. The more you are seen, the more you feel that you exist, kind of. So, in such a system, the gaze of others becomes a divine like force determining self worth and shaping behavior. Likes, follows, shares, these numerical signals become proxies for love, approval, event salvation, even salvation. So the pursuit of attention, once regarded as vanity, is now seen as necessity. So the Quran warns against this, of course. Those you worship besides Allah are nothing but names which you and your forefathers have named. In here illa asma'un sammaytumuha antum wa aba'ukum. So modern digital culture offers us new names, influencer, algorithm, reach, brand, but the logic is the same. It's to elevate created things to the status of ultimate meaning. So when metrics replace morality and visibility replaces value, we approach the condition of the Quran describes as shirk. In Islam, ibadah, worship, means recognizing Allah alone as the final reference point, the sole sources of value, guidance, and legitimacy. When that space is filled by other forces, be it social pressure, market logic, national ideology, or digital metrics, then we are no longer worshiping God, but something else. So, yet, Islam doesn't offer this critique in order to shame or exclude. Rather, it offers it as a path to liberation, a way of freeing ourselves from idols we didn't even realize we had created. So it invites us to restore the right to ask, the right to speak, the right to believe in something higher than algorithmic attention. So Islam reintegrates what modernity has fragmented: ritual and meaning, and self and community, reason and revelation. So it tells us that religion is not culture, not custom, not nostalgia, and it is a way of recognizing what is real and living accordingly. So, for a society like Japan, where religion has become silent, invisible, or literalized without belief, Islam offers a radical alternative. So, a call to speak again, to hope again, and to believe in a world that is once again worth meaningfully engaging. So, in this kind of chapter, I address the challenges facing second generation Muslims in Japan. So, those born into Muslim families but raised in a largely non-Islamic cultural environment. So this is not merely a personal or familial concern. It directly raises broader questions about what it means to inherit faith and how faith must be re-chosen and reintegrated in a secular society. So the term second generation Muslim typically refers to children whose parents or at least one parent are Muslim, but their religious experiences are far from uniform. Some grow up with virtually no Islamic education or exposure, like me, fully assimilating into the values and worldview of Japanese secular society. It's also like me. And others are raised in strictly observant households where religious instructions are delivered in a rigid and unilateral way, which may create deep inner conflict and lead to alienation from Islam. So, looking back on my own experience, I can say that my relationship with faith was not linear or predetermined. I was not raised with regular Islamic practice, nor was I taught to see religion as relevant to daily life. For a long time, the concept of faith seemed distant and irrelevant to my personal existence. Many second generation Muslims live in this space of tension between inherited religion and chosen faith. So Islam teaches that Iman, faith, is not simply a matter of birth or cultural legacy. It must be consciously accepted through knowledge, reflection, and inner conviction. The Quran repeatedly urges believers to engage their intellect and hearts. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, and also أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. And also Al-Ghazali in Al-Munkiz min al-Dalal argue that faith inherited from one's surroundings or family must be tested through doubt, inquiry, and direct personal realization in order to mature into yaqeen, true certitude. For For second generation Muslims, this process of rediscovery is often hindered from the outset. So many parents assume their children will naturally inherit their beliefs, but they may fail to initiate genuine religious education or to create space for questions and exploration. And as a result, children may come to associate religion not with meaning, but with obligation, and eventually with frustration or indifference. One of the most pressing issues faced by second generation Muslims is the disconnect between their own questions and the assumptions held by their parents. Many parents treat Islam as something self evident, something that needs no justification or explanation. They expect their children to believe and practice as they do, often without realizing that such expectations, when not accompanied by dialogue, can lead to resistance or disengagement. For example, when religious duties are delivered as unilateral commands, pray, wear hijab, don't eat pork, like without explanation of their spiritual, ethical, or theological basis, the child may perceive these teachings not as guidance but as control. Control. In such cases, Islam becomes a system of orders rather than an invitation to meaning, and this can drive young people away from the faith rather than toward it. And the Quran reminds us of the limits of human agency in religious guidance. إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء. So this verse emphasizes that true guidance comes from Allah, not from pressure or command. The role of parents and the community is to prepare the space where guidance can occur, a space of listening, reflection, and sincere engagement. So, another key problem lies in the conflation of religion and culture. Islam is revealed universal religion rooted in the Quran and Sunnah, and it speaks to human beings across languages, ethnicities, and eras. Yet, within the home, it is often transmitted along with or obscured by regional and cultural traditions. For instance, rigid gender norms, hierarchical family structures, or intense concern with saving face may be framed as religious obligations when in fact they stem from local customs. When these cultural norms are misrepresented as Islamic commandments, children may grow to reject not only the culture but also the religion mistakenly associated with it. So, Islam offers a direct relationship between the individual and God, a space for reflection, for choice, and for accountability. But when that vertical connection is buried under horizontal social structures, the second generation Muslim may feel that faces something alien, suffocating, or even oppressive. So the challenge is not merely to teach Islam, but to teach it as Islam, and not as a proxy for cultural identity. When young Muslims are allowed to encounter Islam as a faith that speaks to their intellect and soul, not just to their behavior, a path toward genuine conviction may begin to open. So, in order for second generation Muslims to reclaim and internalize their faith, they need more than family support. They need access to community. Islam is a religion that is not merely personal but profoundly communal. So, while personal conviction is essential, practices such as prayer, fasting, and pilgrimage are designed to be shared with others, to blind individuals to a larger moral and spiritual body. But in Japan, Muslim communities remain relatively small and dispersed. Masjids are limited in number and often linguistically or culturally segmented. As a result, many second generation Muslims find themselves without a peer group or mentor who can walk with them on the path of rediscovery. So they may seek understanding but find no one who speaks their language, literally or metaphorically. So this is why safe spaces for exploration are so crucial. These are spaces where young Muslims can ask questions, express doubt, seek knowledge, and build relationships not based on nationality or ethnicity, but on shared pursuit of faith. The Tokyo Camii is one such example, a masjid where Muslims from diverse backgrounds pray, learn, and grow together. The environment is welcoming not only to born Muslims, but to those still figuring out what Islam means to them. So, like Imam An-Nawawi in Riyadh Salihin emphasizes the importance of al-amal bil ma'ruf wal nahi anil munkar, enjoining what is light and forbidding what is wrong. So, but he also stresses that this must be done with wisdom, gentleness, and understanding, not through condemnation or coercion. This brings us to our final and critical point. Faith in the modern world must be reflexively chosen. So, sociologist Anthony Giddens describes contemporary identity as reflexivity, reflexively constructed. So, no longer inherited passively, but actively questioned, negotiated, and reformed. We are no longer just recipients of tradition. We are its interpreters, mediators, and agents. So Islam, importantly, is not threatened by this. It embraces the idea that faith must be rechosen. So it is not a religion of blind inheritance. It is a religion of conviction where belief, iman, is valid only when it is accompanied by sincerity, reason, and intention. So the Quran offers powerful affirmation of this agency. This is the same verse, but inna hadainahu sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafuran. For for the for second generation Muslims, this is both a challenge and an invitation. They are not merely recipients of religion; they are its active bearers. So by questioning, rediscovering, and choosing again, they make the faith their own. And in doing so, they embody the very process through which true belief begins. So I have to also talk about the da'wah, the act of inviting others to Islam within the specific context of Japanese society. So in the Islamic tradition, da'wah is not synonymous with pro- prosi- proselytization. It's a very complex concept, but or coercive preaching. So it is a deeply ethical act, one that seeks to share revealed truth while respecting the other's freedom and dignity. The word da'wah literally means invitation or calling. It is not a command, not a threat, but a gentle opening. The Quran states, ادعو إلى السبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. الموعظة الحسنة. And the term hikmah and موعظة الحسنة, wisdom and beautiful exhortation, point to a mode of communication grounded in attentiveness, sensitivity, and contextual awareness. So that was not about defeating someone in argument. It is about opening a space where truth can be heard. So, yet in Japan, the cultural context makes this incredibly difficult for me. Religion is rarely discussed in public life. To bring up matters of belief is often seen as intrusive, political, or even dangerous. So many people instinctively associate religious speech with coercion, manipulation, or sectarianism. As a result, any explanation of faith, no matter how sincere or respectful, risks being perceived as an unwelcome imposition. In this environment, the practice of dawah is often misunderstood by both its recipients and its practitioners. We must constantly ask ourselves why speak, how to speak, and how to do so without violating the delicate social fabric. And yet, how many minutes left? Sorry.
Maybe around 5 to 10 minutes, and then we go to question and a session. Is it okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
So I will going to wrapping up the discussion. So the dawah has, of course, that it's has a crucial role, vital role to play in Japanese society, precisely because so many people are silently struggling with existential questions, questions about suffering, meaning, death, and how to live well. So these questions may not be expressed in religious terms, but they remain deeply religious in substance. So the point is like the first step is not to answer, but to reaffirm. So, and also the religious speech is often resisted in Japan, and the point is silence is not the only option. So we must speak in ways that are honest, sensitive, and grounded in compassion. This is maybe the most crucial point. And I will skip this. So in this term, we can say that we can see in the Sirah, of course. In Islam, the most powerful form of dawah is often not spoken but lived. The Prophet Muhammad wasallam was not merely the transmitter of the Quran, he was its embodiment. His wife Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, said his character was the Quran. كان خلقه القرآن. MashaAllah. In our time, especially in societies where religious speech is often mistrusted, conduct speaks louder than doctrine. So the way a Muslim walks, speaks, listens, and responds may communicate more about Islam than any theological lecture. Hmm. So they are not moved first by argument, but by presence. So this is what we call silent dawah, a form of witnessing that requires not no words. So equally important is the ability to remain silent when we don't know. So in Islam, to say I don't know is not a failure. It is a form of honesty, ikhlas. So sometimes a quiet, thoughtful response reveals more about faith than a confident but shallow one. The Quran reminds us of the limits of our Lord. إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء. So this verse teaches us that we do not change hearts. That belongs to Allah alone. Our task is not to impose faith, but to prepare the space in which faith might awaken. We offer presence, sincerity, and clarity, but the transformation comes from beyond us. So, in that sense, Dawah in Japan is not a matter of how much we say, but how we live. The society around us may not be ready for overt religious discussion, but it may still recognize dignity, discipline, and kindness. So, these are the seeds of curiosity, and curiosity may become openness, and openness may become faith. So, so in this kind of final chapter, I bring together the central themes discussed throughout this lecture. My personal journey into faith, the reconciliation of reason and revelation. So Japan's non-religious cultural structure, the struggles of second-generation Muslims, and the ethics of Dawah, when within the broader framework of the Islamic worldview. It's maybe can say Tasawwur al-Islami. So this worldview is not a mere set of beliefs or dogmas. It is an integrated system that unifies a wujud and ma'rifa and akhraq. So this is it provides a coherent response to the questions. Why does the world exist? How can we know that truth? And what kind of action does that knowledge demand? So to reiterate, the Quran states, هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. So this verse affirms that Allah is not merely one being among others, but the very ground of all being. So in this worldview, reason and revelation are not opposites, but two complementary paths that ultimately lead to the same truth, like Ibn Rushd narrated. And Islamic thought refuses to isolate metaphysical, moral, and social domains. It links them together under the unifying principle of Tawheed, the oneness of God. So life, death, ethics, community, time, and the afterlife are not treated as separate spheres, but as interrelated dimensions of a meaningful cosmos. So this integrated view stands in sharp contrast to the fragmented landscape of modern Japan. So this is what I mentioned earlier, so I will skip it. And so from an Islamic perspective, this cultural vacuum seen in Japan is not merely a sociological issue. So it is a form of modern idolatry, not the worship of statues, but the elevation of human constructs to the status of absolute authority. So today's idol are not made of stone or gold. They are named the nation, the capital, technology, freedom, and approval and attention. Yeah, like narrated in the Quran. So these names, Asma, when given unquestioned authority, becomes idols in the Quranic sense. So this dictate our actions, values, and self-worth. So they become things we fear, trust, or serve without realizing that we have ascribed to them what belongs only to God. So against this backdrop of spiritual exhaustion and existential dislocation, Islam offers not merely a belief system, but a comprehensive worldview that restores coherence, accountability, and hope. So the point is, firstly, Islam asserts that existence has a source, mm, like narrated here. And second is, Islam teaches that human actions have meaning. Every choice is every deed, every intention is evaluated within a framework or purpose and justice. Goodness is not relative, so ethics are not fluid. They are grounded in divine knowledge and wisdom. So, third, Islam asserts that death is not annihilation, but return. It is not the end, but a transition into another mode of existence, followed by resurrection, judgment, and renewal. So, in a society where death is hidden, like Japan, this teaching reintroduces a moral temporality that transcends mere survival or consumption. So all of these elements are bound together by the principle of Tawheed. Mm. And this is why Islam can speak meaningfully to a world where values seem optional and truth feels out of reach. So it offers not nostalgia, not dogma, but a way of thinking, living, and relating that reorients the human being toward what is real. So at the beginning of this talk, I posed the question, so why is there something rather than nothing? And I found that most compelling answer in the Quran and in the Islamic philosophical tradition. So Islam doesn't demand blind faith. It invites us to reason deeply, to live sincerely, and to act justly. For me, Islam is not only a religion I inherited or embraced, so it is the most coherent response I have found to the brokenness of modern life. So to conclude, what I've shared today is not kind of not meant to provide definitive answers, but to offer just a perspective, one shaped by personal experience, reflection, and study. So I hope it has helped to open a space for thought or perhaps made room for new questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Hani Sensei, for your sharing. It is a value sharing about personal journey of your revert journey, and when we talk about insights of faith and da'wah, and there is two questions here that was being asked by the participants. Number one, this is from Julia Osman on Facebook. Assalamualaikum, Hani Sensei. Um, what advice would you give to Japanese people who are curious about Islam but feel hesitant due to culture or social barriers? Those are Hani
Mhm.
Sensei.
Thank you very much for asking me a question. So yes, that is what actually I was talking about is how to deal with the this kind of values is the yeah. So that hesitation is completely understandable in Japan, and religion is often seen as something very private or even something best avoided. So, but asking deep questions about life, meaning, and faith is not foreign to Islam. So, in fact, it's where faith begins. So, you don't have to approach Islam as something other or foreign. So, start with your own questions. Islam doesn't demand blind belief, so it invites kind of very sincere reflections. and lead and listen and speak with Muslims, not to be persuaded, but to explore. So maybe the important is to nurture his or her curiosity by showing your these. So maybe the first step is not to talk about Islam, not the word. Maybe your behavior make his or her interest into the Islam and your belief and your inheritance and your background. Yeah, this is what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Um, Hani Sensei, there is one more question. Maybe it is from me, myself, as a team from Japan Tower Center on behalf of Japan Tower Center. Just now we are talking about the importance of taqwa and how does one person should understand the youth generations. And I think one of the main platform to reach or maybe preach Islam to the youth generation is through social media, Hani Sensei.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it is a very good from Tokyo Camii Institute doing a very good job in order to maintaining the social media in empowering Islam for the Japanese community. Maybe you could
Sure.
share to us for Japan that was at how could we improve ourselves in terms of media and in terms of reaching out to Japanese people, maybe especially in Osaka here, to about Islam. Maybe, and so you can share your
Thank you
insights.
very much. Thank you very much. The social media activities of the Tokyo Camii Institute is having not so been active longer than 2 or 3 years. So the outcome is not so visible so far. But the we have to say that in terms of this point, I think we we should wait for the outcome. The reaction from the Japanese societies, maybe it takes a couple of years and couple of decades, maybe. I think so because of the 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 Japanese society's history of lacking a religious way of view is so deep in my view. So it takes a very long journey to kind of dissolve this kind of attitude in deeply embedded in Japan. So maybe we have to wait firstly. And also, I was just curious about your experience of the Japan Dao Center in Osaka, especially, and how kind of reactions did you get from the Japanese public? So, can I ask you?
In terms of from the Japan that was center, Sensei,
Mm-mm-mm.
I think because of most of the people that come to Japan Taiwan Center are from the youngsters, especially.
Mm-mm-mm.
And one of the key aspects that from Japan Taiwan Center and especially from Zulsan just now was to connecting Japanese culture with Islam, and not just Japanese culture, but something related to Malaysian culture. And I think um, we see a lot from Tokyo Camii too. Tokyo Camii, whereby combined from the Turkish culture, combine and harmonizing it with Japanese culture. And I think that is one of the um, main uh, progress that main things to do in Japan that was center by connecting through the culture activities. That is the main or maybe the strong thing that uh, invite Japanese people to come to Japan Tower Center, Sensei, and through social
Mm-mm.
media too, inshallah.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So, that is a very great experience. And in terms of this, our activity in Tokyo Journey is, for me, especially in the institute, not the Tokyo Camii as a general institute is kind of separated
from Tokyo.
form of the institution. So our activities so far are kind of oriented to the academic interest, and like running the Arabic courses, running the lectures, serial lectures about the Islamic way of thinking, kind of these things, organizing symposium for the academics, and incorporating any kind of interest into to the Islamic world to one gatherings in Tokyo Jami. So, and in general, these two activities, like combining cultural activities to the Islamic uh, encounter and also the academic exploration on the Islamic world, is maybe going together to the to for Japanese society to discover about Islam beyond the very negative image accumulated from the media coverages. So our activities is both of our activities are very crucial for Japanese societies. Yeah, I think so. Inshallah. Khair.
So, maybe we're looking forward to collaborate more with Tokyo Camii
Inshallah.
Institute and especially
Yeah,
with
yeah,
you, Hani
definitely.
Sensei, inshallah.
Mm-mm.
I think that is all the questions for today live. And on behalf of Japan Dawah Center in Osaka, we thank you, Hani Sensei, for sharing your valuable insights and experience and wisdom for all of us about Islam and about the rivers of Fitrah, the echo of rivers of Fitrah. And may Allah continue you, Hani Sensei, and all of us to guide through His right path and to bless our journey in preaching Islam, inshallah. And we're looking forward,
Inshallah.
of course, to work with you more, Hani Sensei, and especially with Tokyo Camii Institute, inshallah. And I would like to thank to all of the viewers who tuned in and participated for our live talk today. And may Allah grant us all the understanding of this beautiful deen, which is Islam, and help us embody it in our daily lives. And don't forget to follow our pages and stay connected for more events like this, and especially from Hani Sensei. Once again, thank you very much, Hani Sensei, for today.
Thank you
Inshallah,
very
there will be
much.
another time that we'll be meeting again for important events like this, inshallah. Thank you very much, Hani Sensei. Arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa
Assalamualaikum
rahmatullahi wa
warahmatullahi
barakatuh.